Hello and welcome into the live postcast from the Wolves' embarrassing loss to the New York Knicks and Cats return to Target Center. Jack Borman joins me to break down what happened live next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves postcast. We are live following the Timberwolves loss to the New York Knicks and Karl-Anthony Towns return to Target Center on Thursday night. Today's episode is brought to us by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers could place a $5 bet. You get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so Karl-Anthony Towns returns to Target Center on Thursday night. Obviously an emotional night. Timberwolves have won 6 out of 7. The Wolves haven't played since Sunday. The Knicks haven't played since Sunday. There's so many storylines coming into this game. Such buildup. The first quarter is fantastic. It's a really fun game. High quality basketball on both ends of the floor. A little bit of a rough end to the quarter, which then kind of led us into a really kind of a snowball. Excuse me, a snowball of a game for the Wolves. Things got out of control pretty quickly in this one in Cat's return. Ultimately, the Timberwolves end up losing by 26 points, and it really wasn't even that close. Where do you want to start with this one, Jack?
I want to start with something non-basketball related, because there are zero, and for my money, there are zero positive takeaways from this basketball game. And I will say, I was more excited to come to this game and kind of see the sights and sounds of this game than arguably almost any game we've seen this season. We've all had this game circled as Karl-Anthony Towns returned to Target Center. I don't think anyone really, anticipated it going anything like what we saw with Kirk Cousins when he returned to Minnesota, just because I think the ties and the relationships with Karl-Anthony Towns run so much deeper, and he's just an amazing person off the court. And I think, I've gotten texts from people and had conversations with friends and even people with the Knicks of like, how do you remember Karl-Anthony Towns' time as a Timberwolf fan? And I'll just say, first and foremost, he was just a grade A human being. And I think that's the first thing that anybody that you talk to, whether it be his former teammates, former coaches, fans, people that work in the arena, Timberwolves, front office people, other staff members on the social team, whatever it may be. And I think that just speaks volumes about it. And you saw that really stand out in the pregame warm up for Karl. Karl has traditionally always warmed up as one of the last two guys to take the floor for warm-ups. He did that during his time with the Timberwolves as well. And so there were always a lot of fans in the lower bowl watching him warm up, and he always had AirPods in, always. Last season before that, always wore AirPods while he was warming up. Tonight, he noticeably did not have AirPods in. There was a pretty large contingent of fans with signs wearing Karl-Anthony Towns jerseys, all of it that were very eager to see him, that gave him a very warm reception as he stood out, as he, came back out on the floor. I don't think he was expecting that many people to be there that early, waiting to see him with showing that much love. And it was really cool to see. He wanted to hear all the things the fans were saying as he was taking his warm-up shots. He definitely did not get up as many normal warm-up shots as he would normally, because he was interacting with fans and media members. He was dapping everyone up, pointing at little, Timberwolves fans, acknowledging them, just showing everybody the love that they were showing him. And I thought it was really cool that Knicks security and team staff members essentially had to like drag him off the warm-up floor before the game, because there were so many fans that wanted an autograph, that wanted a photo, that just wanted any sense of acknowledgement. And he refused to leave the court until almost every single fan that was there had either a photo, reached out, touched hands, signed an autograph, whatever the case may be. And I think that just really speaks to Karl's character. And I thought that was a really cool moment for him to be able to have that going on while Spike Lee's sitting with his dad, watching him warm up, and his dad is taking it all in, greeting people as well. And I think that that was something that was really cool that I think I will remember for quite some time. And you saw, I tweeted out a 3-minute or so long video earlier tonight that I'd encourage people to go check out on Twitter at the handle that you see there on the screen. Just of him interacting with Ant and Rudy Gobert and Chris Hines and some of the other Timberwolves staff members. You see Ant in the video, you see Ant come and dap up Karl Sr. You see Ant and Karl take a photo with 3 or 4 young Timberwolves fans that were standing there courtside. And it was just kind of weird to see Karl in a different uniform, and really brought you back to kind of the vibe of last season. And I think that was what made last year's team so special, is that everyone was so incredibly tight-knit with one another, and they all got along great. And that really, shone through on the floor, and that it was a team that played really hard all year, that played really connected basketball. And I think Karl was at the heart of a lot of that, because you heard a lot of the ways that guys like Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniels spoke about Karl and how active he was in the group chat, and just like how, much of kind of a social maven he was. And Rudy talked about the different ways that he tried to connect with Rudy when he got traded here. They would watch, MMA fights together. They would play Call of Duty. Karl would constantly invite him over to his house to do anything. And I think, it's kind of a good segue into what we're seeing with this Timberwolves team right now, is just that there are some pretty big shoes to fill. And Karl-Anthony Towns, the basketball player, has like size 19, size 20 shoes, and leaves behind a pretty huge wake. But to me, I think they miss Karl-Anthony Towns, the person, and what he did in that locker room, and how he brought everybody together, and how that kind of fun-loving, infectiously positive and warm personality rubbed off on everyone and kind of helped galvanize everything. And, yes, you don't necessarily miss the crazy passes that we saw in the first quarter, the almost charges, some miscommunications with teammates trying to get rebounds, things like that. But that all pales in comparison to, I think, all the positives that he brought. And with the Timberwolves right now, I mean, we can just go to that second quarter. Naz Reid had a nice ode to Karl with 3 first quarter fouls. A couple of which were pretty head scratching. So he was sitting when he was normally in the game. And I think that kind of threw the Timberwolves rotation all out of whack a little bit. You had a lineup of Rob Dillingham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert in there at the start of the second quarter. And they just could not generate any sort of offense whatsoever. I think Ant exited with like 45 seconds left in the first quarter. And Randall, after a really excellent first quarter for Julius Randle, I think he had 13 points and looked like it was shaping up to be a very funny game, and that Randall's trying to spoil, Karl's return, and was playing very well. And then the train kind of came off the tracks at the end of the first quarter, had that inexplicable turnover that led to an OG Anunoby layup right before the end of the first quarter. And things just kind of spiraled from there. It was a 21-2 Knicks run that ballooned to a 26-2 run in the first 6 minutes of the second quarter, and it just kind of ended from there. And like I was saying, with Naz getting in foul trouble, kind of created some weird lineups. I think just in a way, it kind of spotlighted where this Timberwolves team has really struggled all year long with Ant off the floor, and that they just haven't been able to find enough consistent offensive creation. And especially on really the first night I can remember all year that Naz Reid's been in foul trouble, there just wasn't a whole lot there behind him, especially in the rebounding department either. And even with Gobert in there, it was just a team that was kind of getting killed on the glass and was really struggling to get rebounds in important moments. There were some back-breaking offensive rebounds that led to kick-out threes that just took the energy out of the building. And again, like I said, it was a 21-3 Knicks run in the 4 minutes that Anthony Edwards sat. But even when he returned, he was mighty passive. And he just kind of let Randall, mess around with the basketball and kind of do whatever he wanted to, and just kind of approach the game with a really lethargic energy that I think rubbed off on his teammates. And then, we've talked about the energy that Julius Randle has kind of brought to this team, and the vibe that he has brought, which has not necessarily been, very good. I just think there was a lot of moaning and groaning from this Timberwolves crowd with each possession that the two of them kind of wasted away and didn't take control of or bring anything positive to. The Timberwolves didn't run very many plays at all. It was just kind of haphazardly bringing the ball up, setting one screen, making one pass, taking a shot, or dribbling into the lane and turning it over. The Wolves started 1 of 5 with 2 turnovers, while the Knicks are 6 of 11 with no turnovers and 3 offensive rebounds in the first couple minutes. And then, and I thought it was a lot of bad offense that fueled bad defense, where the Knicks played a lot in transition and semi-transition. And the Wolves just didn't get matched up. They couldn't get their defense set. And again, I think that a lot of that tone was being set by their 2 stars, with Ant just being passive and not playing with a whole lot of energy, and Randall just sucking the soul out of Target Center in that second quarter. I think it's a game where when you look at the box score, it doesn't really do it justice. I think you have to watch the game and really be able to hear what was going on in the arena, because fans, with every time Randall touched the ball, were just kind of groaning of like, oh boy, what's going to happen now? I mean, there was a moment in the second quarter, I believe, where Randall had a wide open kick-out pass to one of 2 guys on the wing, and the crowd is like screaming, like, these guys are wide open, like, how do you not see this? And eventually passed it when it was too late. And it's just those type of, and I think there was a tweet that Barflon Tito sent out too of Randall's off-ball defense, in transition after he missed a 3, doesn't get back and gives up a layup. I mean, it's just those types of things that the crowd notices and just takes the air out of the building. And again, I think is just the antithesis of that vibe that Karl-Anthony Towns brought to the team last year. And I think, again, when Randall doesn't really fit the identity of the team, I think you can kind of make up for some of that if you're bringing a really good vibe to the team. But I just don't think he's doing that. And when neither of those things are working, especially in a year where he's an expiring contract, I just really think you start to look at how long is too long before you press that trade button, because the vibe that he is bringing is permeating through the rest of the team right now in a really unfortunate way.
Yeah, and your point about Karl-Anthony Towns and the what you opened with, his the vibe and the energy that he brings, and then now talking Julius Randle, there's a lot of differences on the court between those two, but there are a lot of differences off the court between those two, and the overall demeanor, vibe, I think, are great words to use. It just feels different, and to see it happen, for the game to also be not a close game, and then to see those stark differences in how joyous Cat is all the time and how he was soaking it all in, and then you have kind of the sullen look that Julius Randle has on his face, and yeah, a great first quarter, but it went away very quickly. You gave the example of the second quarter, when Randle didn't kick the ball to either corner. There was one in the third quarter where it was actually the one that the Knicks challenged, I'm pretty sure. And ultimately it was unsuccessful. They changed the foul from I think an Anunoby foul to a Brunson foul. But on that play, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is wide open in the right corner. Randle drives into 4 guys, and Nod does the slump the shoulders and walks away right after the play, because it was like, here we go again. He's driving into a crowd and I'm wide open. And, it's not that Cat never did that, because he did, and would definitely have gotten called for a charge somehow. But, he didn't do it every time down the floor. And that's kind of what this feels like. And I think Wolves fans are thinking Randle was billed as a better passer. Randle was billed as, all this.
And he showed it in the first part of the season.
Yes.
He was a great playmaker in the first part of the season.
And even in the first quarter of this game, he had, I think, at least 2-3 assists. So yeah, it's the combination of those things. The stark difference on the floor and the stark difference in demeanor and kind of the ancillary stuff, right? The stuff that's harder to measure, combined with the how bad this game turned out for the Wolves, really kind of underscores it all. All right. Next, we'll hit a couple more things from this game. We'll talk some bigger picture stuff. Then we'll look ahead to Wolves Warriors upcoming on Saturday night. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of the Locked On Wolves postcast is brought to us by our friends at Built Rewards. Today's episode is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. You can use points for travel. You can use points for any other rewards that you use. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our link so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. All right. So, let's see. This game is just there's so much, like we covered it. I mean, you touched on the rotation early second quarter. That was one of my notes, was the rotation, which was caused by the foul trouble to Nas, a complete lack of offense. And that to me was, I know that they were hamstrung a little bit by the foul trouble, but I feel like the Wolves could have stopped the bleeding a little bit sooner. Finch should have stopped the bleeding a little bit sooner with the timeout. And then ultimately it was still only like 3 minutes. It's just the Knicks scored so much so quickly. And it also felt like the edge that was there. I was on Locked On Knicks, and I did a crossover episode today, and they asked me what was different about the Wolves defense lately. And I was like, well, they're crisper. They're playing harder. The rotations are crisper. The scheme hasn't really changed, other than occasionally how far Gobert is dropping and drop depending on the opponent. And actually that was a problem in this game, was they weren't getting up on shooters on the perimeter, whether it was the guards or whether it was Karl-Anthony Towns, who the Wolves should know better than anybody. The first two cat threes were trail threes. One was, I think, Nas. The other was Rudy, where they basically closed out to touch at like 28 feet, which is what you would do with like Julius Randle, not what you would do with Karl-Anthony Towns. So silly things like that. And then I think, the foul trouble throwing off the whole rotation that really set this thing off. And I'm not saying if Nas doesn't get into foul trouble in the first quarter, they don't lose this game and they don't get blown out, because there were a lot of issues, but that kind of caused things to start to spiral. And then there was the crowd kind of turning on every time Randall touched the ball, and moans and groans, and things really kind of snowballed from there. But to me, it was some of the lackadaisical play defensively that we saw early in the season that came back and bit the Wolves in this one.
Totally. And I think the moaning and groaning was contributed by the fact that Karl outscored the Timberwolves by himself in the second quarter. He had 19 points on 5 of 6 shooting, made all 3 of his threes, was 6 of 7 from the foul line, had 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, had a double-double before halftime. Like, I think when you juxtapose that with how Randall played in the second quarter, that totally feeds into everything that you just talked about. And I think in part, like, the biggest thing for the Timberwolves defense was just that it felt like late in the first quarter, the offensive rebounding or the defensive rebounding issues that they had of inopportune offensive rebounds that led to backbreaking corner threes or wing kick out threes or just weird sequences of plays where there were loose balls that New York ended up with that they scored on, that just added a weird energy to things that snowballed into the second quarter, exactly like you were talking about. And I don't necessarily think that there was anything that the defense had that was a structural problem in this game. I don't think that there's anything we saw from this game that should discount what we've seen in the last 2 to 3 weeks, where the Timberwolves have been far and away the #1 defense in the NBA. And they put up great performances against Anthony Davis, Steph Curry, James Harden, Victor Wembanyama. Sure, 3 of those 4 were against teams on the second night of a back-to-back, but holding teams to under 95 points in today's NBA in 6 of 8 games, regardless of what team it is, regardless of what the context is an incredibly, legitimately an awesome accomplishment for any defense to play. And you have to have a sustained level of excellence on that end of the floor and a great scheme and great players that are all playing hard to be able to, to play at that level for that consistently or for that long. And two, like, again, like they played with an evident swagger and confidence that I think they lost tonight and is going to be difficult for them to recapture, considering the circumstances of this game. that they played on national TV. It exposed their weaknesses, that they don't have much center depth at all behind Gobert. And that's something that I think needs to be addressed, because when Nas wasn't out, when, not being able to have Nas should not crater things the way that it did. Again, the offensive rebounds, 11 offensive rebounds for 9 second chance points pre-garbage time. The second chance points thing is fine there. I think it was more, again, like I said earlier in the game, I don't think this is a game that you can just look at the box score and understand like what happened. It definitely was more of a vibes based, watching the game, seeing how players reacted, seeing how the crowd reacted to everything that was going on. And I just think that when your 2 stars don't bring the energy that you need to play with, and Rudy Gobert really struggled to get into this game either defensively, like you're just going to get a snowball effect of a huge run like we had. And then, things kind of find their level for the rest of the game after that. But again, I just don't think that this is a loss that the Wolves can brush off. There's some really tough, I think, vibes and, just kind of bad energy that this team is going to have to sort out in the next few days. And I think too, I saw something today on Twitter that I think everybody that's watching this should go watch when they're done watching this. It was something that I tweeted out that I saw. It was a video of Cam Johnson, who's a forward on the Nets, on the Young Man in the 3 podcast. He was speaking with Sue Bird. He was talking about trades, both in the past and ones that may be upcoming, and how playing on a rebuilding team can weigh on a team and weigh on individual players. And I think that, just how much, uncertainty comes with a team, and how much, kind of awkwardness there can be when you have a player like, say, for instance, Julius Randle, who very well could be traded in the next 6 weeks, or a team, in this case, adjusting to a new roster and, all the difficulties that come along with that. That it weighs on a team, and that it's hard for guys to connect, and there's an elephant in the room, and there's just awkwardness that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to play with the same, vibe and connection that this team played with last season. And that's just important context, I think, to keep in mind that, if we can feel it as fans, as people analyzing the team, watching the game and being in the arena, I think the players feel it on such a, maximized and magnified level that is just really hard to, I think, quantify when you're thinking about a team in the micro and in the macro. And yes, Big Wood, there were plenty of boos that were directed at the Timberwolves as a whole, and at Julius Randle. Almost every time he touched the ball, in fact, in the second and third quarter, there were moans, groans, boos, all sorts of that. But it just seems like he's on a completely different wavelength than everyone else on the team. And again, like, some people can draw parallels to like the D'Angelo Russell situation, 2 years ago, before he was traded at the trade deadline for Mike Conley. Like, we all kind of knew that he might get traded, but at least he was producing. Like, he was playing at a really high level for really November, December, January, leading into that trade deadline, where it helped the Wolves. And we're just not getting that from.
Yeah, it's not every, just like
quite frankly.
Yeah. It just like every win is not created equal. Every loss isn't created equal. And that goes back to the vibes.
I'm not getting audio coming in.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Keep going.
Hello? Can you hear me? Anybody hear me? Maybe it might just be you, Jack. It looks like I'm getting audio. Okay. Comments say they can hear both of us. So we're just going to keep rolling. Okay, so the last point I was going to make there is, and then we'll go to the ad read, and Jack, we can figure it out. So to your point, like not every win is created equal, every loss isn't created equal either, and the vibes thing is part of that here. And clearly, Tim Connolly's walking a tightrope when he makes a trade like this before the season. And we don't need to get to the financials on the postcast, but that was obviously kind of the impetus for this, and it's such a difficult needle to thread when you bring in a guy who was an all-star last year. You trade out a guy who was an all-star last year, and the guy you're bringing in could be a free agent this summer, and there always is the possibility you can trade him. And so there's kind of that, and obviously that, setting aside all the basketball stuff, and it was always going to be tough to integrate somebody to a conference finals team in, we're still only 24, 25, something like that, 26 games into the season. That's hard to integrate anybody. And for a team like this that's already as established as they were after last season, to make that move on the eve of training camp and to make it all work is difficult. And now the question is, do you stay the course the rest of the season, or do you pull the chute, as you're suggesting maybe they should do, because they've got to do it quickly, as they're kind of teetering on the edge of the play-in, and the deadline now with it earlier than it used to be is only like 6 weeks away. So definitely a lot more to talk about there, and we'll have it covered at Locked On Wolves for sure. I do want to talk a little bit about the Wolves-Warriors matchup. The Warriors were also embarrassed tonight. We'll get into that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. Today's episode of the postcast of Locked On Wolves. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Right now, there's actually not a line yet on Wolves-Warriors for Saturday night. I don't know why that is, but no line so far in FanDuel. But you can check out any NBA game, like, for instance, let's see, what do we have for tomorrow night? We've got Thunder at the Heat. The Thunder are actually right now only 1-point favorites at Miami tomorrow night. And so you can go check that out on FanDuel. And again, in the middle of the game, you can check out live betting and all that there as well. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Are you good, Jack? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what was going on there.
I figured it out. It's the joys of live postcasts. All right. So I want to talk just real briefly about Wolves Warriors on Saturday. Of course, they split a pair of games in Golden State a couple of weeks ago. That was actually the last time the Knicks won, or excuse me, not the Knicks, the Warriors. Last time the Warriors won was when they beat the Wolves nearly 2 weeks ago. They've lost 3 straight since then. They were blown out by the Grizzlies by 51 points. They gave up 143 points to the Mavericks the other night. They've also lost to the Rockets since the last time, since they beat the Wolves a week ago last Sunday. So we've seen this a couple of times. We get to see it at Target Center now. What are you looking for in Wolves Warriors on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's a really interesting collection of basketball teams that are just in a really weird spot, coming off of horrible losses that seem like losses that start a losing streak. And so I'm really curious of just kind of what the kind of collective heart and compete level and how connected either of these teams look. The Warriors obviously just made a trade for Dennis Schroeder. They traded DeAnthony Melton and some second-round picks to the Nets for Schroeder because they've been pretty devoid of any offensive shot creation outside of Steph Curry. And it did not go well in the debut. He had 5 points on 2 of 12 shooting, was a -34 in 22 minutes. And we also have to give a shout-out to Timberwolves lover Draymond Green, who set an NBA record tonight. This is courtesy of StatHead. Worst plus-minus of all time in 20 or fewer minutes, -42 tonight in 19 minutes for Draymond Green. So
that's crazy.
I'm curious if, how he responds, how Steph Curry responds. Steph Curry also, really struggled in this one for the Warriors, had 2 points on 0 of 7 shooting, 0 of 6 from the 3-point line in 24 minutes. Just 2 points, was a minus 41 in his minutes. So him and Draymond combined 0 of 11 and collectively a minus 83 in 43 minutes. So I'm very curious to see how those guys are going to respond. Obviously, they have a lot more credibility and connectivity over the years than what this Timberwolves group has. So you certainly will expect that they'll offer more of a punch. But I'm curious to see too how the Wolves are going to respond, because I think Ant looked pretty lethargic in this game. And we've already been over it with Randall. Rudy Gobert did not bring much to this game at all for the Wolves, had 3 points and 4 rebounds. So I am curious to see how those three guys end up bringing it in front of the home crowd. Again, that was very willing to voice their displeasure with how the team played. I just think that, those guys have been putting way too much pressure on guys like Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker to come in and just steady the ship, when really your stars should be the ones steadying the ship and your role players should be the ones being able to add to that. And I think, again, when your role players are the guys that are coming in and trying to play the right way, I think it obviously can be a good thing if your role players are really contributing in a good way. But I just think that right now there's a little bit too much pressure on those three guys to really come in and be productive. And on nights when they don't have it, it's just been tough for the Wolves in recent games. And I'd like to see the Wolves 3 stars really come out and play hard and play well, considering that it should be a good matchup for all of them to be able to produce against a Warriors team that has really, really struggled on both ends of the floor. And again, it's a great matchup for the Timberwolves defense. We've seen what the Timberwolves defense has done against this Warriors team in the last couple of outings. It doesn't have a whole lot to offer, off the dribble on the perimeter. And so if you can run them off the 3-point line and force them to play below the 3-point line, kind of clog up their spacing a little bit, that'll be something I'll watch for. Another thing too, how much is Draymond Green going to play at the 5? That was something that they did really successfully in that second matchup against the Wolves. So that'll be something that I'm looking for as well.
Yeah, that was their big adjustment from when the Wolves really kind of blew them out in game 1 of that mini 2-game series in Golden State. That they played Draymond at the 5, switched out 3/5 of their starting lineup, and adjusted their approach, mostly related to Draymond at the 5. But overall, and it worked out for them. But to your point about both teams bouncing back, normally you'd say, well, they're at home, they have the rest or the travel advantage, whatever. But with the vibes at Target Center on Wednesday, things could snowball again, right? And the Warriors, like you said, have a bit more connectivity longer term as a group with the coach and their superstar, and just have more cachet. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that there is an advantage in this game. I think somebody's got to jump out and jump on the opponent early and see if they'll collapse after getting blown out last time out. And hopefully it's the Wolves that can come out and play hard on Saturday night at Target Center. All right. That's all we got for you today here on the Postcast. Of course, we go live after each and every Timberwolves game, typically hosted by Luke Inman with Jack Borman, and every Wolves game, home and away, at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube live. And then the audio will be available on Locked On Wolves, the audio feed, immediately following. So if you ever miss a live show, you can check it out there. And then I host the daily show Monday through Friday on Locked On Wolves on all the audio feeds and also on YouTube. But the home for this postcast after every game is on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. That's all we got for you tonight. Big thank you for watching. A big thank you for listening after the fact. Hopefully the Wolves will get back at it on Saturday against Golden State in a much different way than they got after it against the Knicks on Thursday. All right, we'll see you all on Saturday night.